Well, President Vladimir Putin extending his reign over Russia in a landslide election. He ran largely unopposed, so the results are really no surprise. And now moving into his fifth term, Putin is declaring his determination to advance deeper into Ukraine and dangling new threats against the West. North Central College political science professor Stephen Caliendo joins us now to discuss the election and ramifications. There are a lot of issues. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tia. Thank you.
So a lot of issues, particularly with this election, considering that it's not a democracy to start with. This election is not free or fair. The election there is nothing like ours. Can you talk about what the process is like there in Russia?
Yeah, I mean, the real important part here is that dissent is crushed. Meaningful dissent is crushed. People who are perceived to be powerful in their dissent disappear or are killed or die mysteriously, as we've seen over the last few months. And so that's why it's not a meaningful election, because nobody seriously can run against Vladimir Putin. And so it's not surprising that he ends up getting 80%, 90% of the vote, in different election years, even at a very high voter turnout. The other part of it, Tia, of course, is that the administration controls the media. And so the information that people have access to regarding the war, regarding all kinds of things, is very limited to that which the administration wants people to receive. And so that affects the vote choice as well.
It's interesting that you talk about the high voter turnout there. Even the video when they were doing the elections, you saw people lined up around the block. Really a contrast to what we're reporting here for the primary election. You're not seeing that here. And in fact, our very own Casey Crone is talking about the low voter turnout. It's all really interesting when you look at, different sides of the world on this.
I agree. I think it's really interesting. And there's a couple of things. You can look at it from many perspectives. One is, of course, that we have vote by mail. We have early voting. I mean, we've done things to try to increase voter turnout, even though it hasn't worked, that would make the visuals of the long line sort of go away. On the other hand, Russia votes over several days. It's not just a one-day affair. And again, I go back to this as sort of the information source. But the fact that we are having such low voter turnout in an important election makes me worry about the state of democracy. We got to remember, Tia, it's not an inevitable that we have a democratic society, and more people are starting to feel like maybe it's not even the best form of government. Some of the most powerful nations have dictatorships, and so if we don't keep our democracy, then there's a possibility that it won't be there.
Well, let's hope people turn out tomorrow. That is for sure. We've talked about Putin and we've talked about the war between Ukraine and Russia. I thought Putin hinted at a few things before he actually won the election. What do you think this will look like between Ukraine and Russia over the next couple of months and maybe even over the next few years, if it reaches to that point?
Right. In a way, Tia, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that when Putin gets such a high percentage of the vote because of all the tactics that are used to depress challenges to him, he takes that as a referendum to continue to do more of what he's doing. At the same time, of course, the U.S. has balked on funding for Ukraine and for a variety of reasons, and as a result, the Ukrainians are they're holding back on some of the weapons that they really need. They're starting to run short, and so as they begin to lose territory, there's going to be a cycle that plays out there too. Furthermore, adding insult to injury, they made sure that in Crimea and some of the other Russian occupied places of Ukraine had elections for the Russian presidential election. And so that's very offensive to Ukrainians, of course, but it's very much on par with what Vladimir Putin has promised he will continue to do.
All right. Well, as always, we appreciate you breaking it down here on First at 4. Professor Stephen Caliendo, thank you so much.